Welcome, episode 103. Appreciate you being here for another great episode. We have another special guest with us, Ray Arnott. He is with us. If you don't know the name, or maybe you thought you heard it, listen to this episode, and it should dawn on you. But Ray Arnott came on with us to talk about model railroading. So stick around, because, as you know, we're going to get the show on the tracks. Welcome, my friends, episode 103. As we said in our intro, we've got another very special guest. We're excited. We're always excited to have guests on here, but the last episode, you remember, we had Spring Creek Model Trains, Mike and Jeff over there. And now this one, as we said in our intro, we have Ray Arnott. I reached out to Ray and asked him, "Hey, why don't you come on here? Let's talk about model trains and stuff." So we have a very, very good conversation ahead of us. And you know what? Enough of me jabbing on about it. Let's just move forward and into the interview. And here we are with another very special guest. We have Ray Arnott with us today. He has so graciously said he would come on as a guest. So, Ray, thank you for coming on to the show.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Awesome. We're glad to have you with us. So, well, let's just dive right into this. When did you get your start in model railroading?
Oh, boy. I think I've had a couple starts. And
Really?
maybe that happens for quite a few of us model railroaders, right? A start and a restart and a restart again. But my first train set really was bought for me maybe even before I was born. My dad was so excited to have a boy that he ran out and in my age, I mean, I don't even know how he knew I was going to be a boy. He just knew. And went to the local hardware store / toy store / everything, which was called Benny's, and purchased me the Tyco Chattanooga set.
Oh, okay.
So I had that as a kid, but never really set it up. I think at one point we set up a little 4x8, when I was 5, 6, 7, somewhere around that, but we really never did anything with it. My parents lived in a house that had limited space, so it wasn't anything that we could set up for long periods of time. Then, teenage years went away, and really I got back into model railroading somewhere in 03, 04, 05, somewhere in that neighborhood. I had an apartment with a really nice basement. So I started again, and the only thing I really knew was 4x8. So started that again, and kind of the prototype kicked that off. Seeing the New England Central in Franklin, Connecticut, the blue and gold GP38s really fired that modeling spirit back up again. And as I saw the prototype, I went to eBay and said, "Can I find these?" And I did, and found that Atlas had done a run of these, and started buying a few of those locomotives, and then started kind of relearning the hobby, learning really, because I didn't really know all that much other than the Tyco set I had. So now it was like all brand new to me again at age 23, 24, 25, whatever it was.
Wow. And it's funny because that you said that, because your story kind of mimics mine. I was the same thing when I was a kid. Me and my dad got a train set and stuff, and then, like, just like you, teenage years, it's cars and girls and whatever. And then I think it was about the same time for me. Yeah, 2002, 2003 when I actually got back into it, and like you, it was like, just because you did it when you were a kid doesn't mean it's the same now. And the second time around, you do kind of look back. It doesn't matter if you were a kid or even an adult, and then you came back to it. There's always something new. There's always something to learn in the hobby.
No, the
So,
hobby is always evolving, right?
yeah,
And that's what's amazing about it is, how much changes, how much stays the same,
yep,
some of the theory and all that, but the technology, and of course, we're on that. Boy, I think the if you put a line graph, I think it's like on a 45 or 50-degree angle of
yeah,
just amazing stuff and where it was 40 years ago when that Tyco set was bought for me to where we are now, or even 10 years ago or 15 years ago to now. And
mhm.
it's going to be amazing to see where we get 10 or 15 years from now
Oh,
and how much technology is going to advance.
oh, I absolutely agree. It's, well, I just recently discovered Azatrax, which I know they've been around for a while, but, um, because of Azatrax and their setup, I never I've never been the kind where, okay, I wanna go super prototypical and have signals and stuff because I just wanna run trains. But yet I wanna be able to operate the physical operations, I guess, as prototypical as I can. And once I seen it and I looked into it and talked to Azatrax, it's like I'm now, uh, starting to signal my railroad with Azatrax and, um the technology that they have, they make it so easy. I never
Yeah.
wanted to get into the like, having to hook it up to a computer or doing Arduino or anything like that, and you don't have to with theirs, but it's, it's yeah, you're right. It's 10 years ago, I would have never even no, or I wouldn't have been able to do it because I don't have the patience to learn the programming and the it wasn't available. So, yeah, it's definitely grown and for the better too.
Well, what you're mentioning there, really the plug and play has made the difference.
Yes, it has.
20 years ago, you might have needed a degree in electrical engineering to be able to pull all this off. Now it's here's a kit, here's how it's done. And
Yep,
of course, all that information right at our fingertips, thanks to YouTube University and everything else that's out there
right.
that really gives us all the info we need to make that happen. It's golden era really of model
Mhm.
railroading. I say it multiple times over and over again. It's such a great era. I know
Right.
there's some folks that think, there's decline, but going back to what we were talking about just a few moments ago, it really is the evolution. It's evolving, it's ever evolving.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not going to be the same hobby that it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's going to be different, but different is good.
Right.
If we stayed stagnant, then we would be in decline. But the change is what allows it to continue to grow.
Right. And um, I know we've talked about on the past, with past episodes about the guests have talked about, there's those of us that we enjoy getting rail car kits back in the day, Athearn and Accurail and whatnot. They're getting harder and harder to find. So that, and I hate to put a negative spin, but that to me would be the one little negative spin of the manufacturers have gotten away, not 100%, but they have gotten away some from the kits. And those of us that enjoy building those kits, that's bad for us. But on the flip side of it, the positive, like you just said, the technology and stuff. I mean, somebody coming into this hobby, you've got the ready to run stuff. You've got DCC. Shoot, I remember when DCC first came out, there was no DCC equipped locomotives or DCC ready. You had to hardwire, which I still enjoy doing. So for somebody coming in the hobby, it's great for them. They can buy a DCC decoder, ready to run car that looks awesome. Plus, going back to the electrical, uh, uh, Woodland Scenics, they have their lighting kits, and Walther has theirs to where it's literally plug and play. And to some, that's a negative, but for the hobby, my opinion, anyways, it's a positive because it helps those either looking at getting into the hobby or coming into the hobby. It gives them an easier way to get in and then build off of that.
Well, I think all of it boils back to didn't life get all of a sudden so much busier
Yeah.
and more complicated? Where back in the day, I would say you maybe had one or two hobbies
Mhm.
and things were probably less busy. But I know with two young daughters
Mhm.
and a full time job and some other things I love to do as well. I would love to build a kit. Building AccuRail kits is a lot of fun.
It is.
It's an absolute blast, but it's also time consuming, and time is a commodity.
Yeah.
And if I want to continue to finish my layout and do scenery on it and have a podcast and have other hobbies, play a little hockey or run a hockey league or all the other things I do, something's got to go. And I think that's what the manufacturers are starting to answer.
Sure.
Is the part that what is the demand? And I think the demand is, and maybe in some senses, we also live in a world of instant gratification too, where we want to have it right away and we want to go. We don't want to walk through the process. There's people of that sort. So that's what they're meeting. They're meeting demand of ready to roll or straight out of the box, or like we talked about, easier to do because they've taken away the complications so you can continue to move forward. And I think that's a good thing too. There's still options to build stuff, maybe less options, but then there's other ways to bring the modeling back into it, which is, we've talked about that with Kevin Tully of Tully Models and Steel Mill Modeler Supply and Southern Tier Grain Modeler Supply. He produces 3D parts for grain mills and steel mills, but he's not there to give you the whole thing. He wants to inject the modeling back. He just makes it a little easier for you to get those components to put back together.
Right.
And I think that's where the manufacturers' heads are at. They just want to make it easier for you to continue to move forward.
Right. Oh, I agree. And I'm not complaining, I guess because there's plenty of people out there. I've had him on the show a few times. Scott from Scott's Trains, he goes out and purchases. People are selling stuff. He sells a lot of not used, they're new in box, but he'll buy collections, and he has a ton of kit cars. So there are people out there that, using the cars as an example, that you can still purchase some from. And no, they may not be super detailed like, the scale trains and heck, even some of the Walthers and Athearn that are coming out now, ready to runs. But for me, going back to what you're saying, even in building those kits, you can build them quicker, or even if it's ready to run, that isn't maybe highly detailed like the scale trains or whatnot. Build your layout, or in the meantime, when you do get time, you can always go back and super detail them, cut off the molded on grab irons and put the metal ones in and super detail them at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we kind of got a little way from the list there. So let's move on to, what's a special memory that you may have from model railroading, whether it was from a childhood or adulthood?
It is so hard to narrow that down because I think the hobby itself is just loaded with memories, right? I think that's what really makes it special is the people that you meet, the relationships you build. And boy, to narrow that all down into one is difficult, but I guess I'll have to go with essentially the memories I created by meeting who I would say is my mentor in the hobby, the late Michael Du Bois. And Mike was so enthusiastic. When I met him, Mike was already sick. He was terminally ill, but he had so much enthusiasm for me to get restarted in the hobby. He introduced me to operations, which you'll hear me say 100 times over. And maybe one of my faults is because I'm so into operations now, I forget that there's other things out there, and I've been told that.
Right.
But I also see for a lot of people, and I like to use my line graph sample. Mm-hmm. You have people that are interested in model railroading, and I see it like 15, 20 degree incline on the line graph. And then when they find operations, when they find their railroad can have a purpose, that pivot point becomes a 45 degree angle and it just shoots off. And I think it's a human nature, again, of purpose. Mm-hmm. When you find out your railroad can actually do something and you can build it not only as something to rail fan, but something to build as a simulator, I think that really just kind of sparks people. And that's what happened to me when I met Michael Du Bois. He introduced me to operations. And then when I told him, all right, rendition 3, I guess, of my layout's going to be another 4x8, he said, stop. Let's build you a small switching layout. And he spent his final months here on Earth
Mm-hmm.
dragging himself out of a bed and down to my basement to help me lay track. And I guess the best of the singular memories of that are 2 photos. One I have of him looking at my layout, figuring out the track plan, figuring all this switching that he wanted. He's like, it's got to have lots of switching, lots of switching, lots of switching. And then him coming to operate it for the first shakedown session. And he's got an NCE hammerhead throttle against his chin, staring at this track, trying to figure out how to switch this creation that he made. He was even stumped by his own work. So I've got that great memory. Mike ended up passing away, and he's been gone a few years now. It's still, every time I go down there, I know Mike's modeling with me. It's certainly, I have that feeling, and I'll always have the memories, the laughs that we had down there. Just him and I, when we met each other, and I'm going on a little bit here, but it's so refreshing and such a great feeling when you find somebody who can geek out as much as you do, right? When you find your people.
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could say about model railroading that was too geeky for Mike. Like, he was right there with me. Like, I'd mention some little weird detail or some niche thing, and he'd be like, yeah, that's great. And we'd get into that conversation. So when you find your people, and I think that's what this whole community is about, is we just find people that are just as nerdy or geeky as we are in a great way.
Right. Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's a great memory that you have there. And there again, I started asking guests that question because it's, trying to get beyond the typical stuff, because I guess to help show, because with my show, I've kind of finally honed in over the past year of, I want to teach, promote, and inspire in the hobby. And so many people that you talk to nowadays, oh, you do model trains or model, or do you have a train set and stuff like that? They don't understand that. And for somebody maybe listening, whether it's my podcast or yours, any podcast that's looking at coming into the hobby, to be able to hear those fond memories and maybe use those fond memories to trigger something in them to say, hey, well, I have fond memories. Maybe let's get into this hobby and see how even more great it is if we're hearing these great stories. So yeah,
Well,
that's awesome.
we're all compelled by stories.
We are.
It's a human thing. We love a great story. We love to go sit in a movie theater and watch an action hero for 2 hours, meet their guide, and overcome the dilemma that they were facing. And when we hear model railroaders doing the same thing
Mm-hmm.
and be able to tell those stories and hear them, we're all seemingly have an ability to be inspired by that. And it's
Right.
great. It's great to be able to, put that message out there for people to hear. And hopefully that puts them in a spot where they start figuring out what it is in this hobby that they really want to be a part of and do. And hopefully what it also does is get them to stick their neck out a little bit and meet some people,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
my little fun saying is the hobby is so much better shared.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lone wolves out there, and that's fantastic. It's really, the hobby is for you. But when you start to meet your people, as I mentioned before, it really just changes the entire thing, and join the community. It's a pretty amazing one.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, once you and whether you have to take the first step or you meet a few people and they take the first step, y- that's the one thing I would tell anybody: use that opportunity to just use it. It's worth it. It's worth that little extra step. And um, I mean, I know getting back into the hobby, well, 2.5 years ago, and even doing the podcast, I've met some great people. maybe not in person, um, but the relationships that I have developed, whether it be through text messaging or calling or like us right here, it's awesome. And we're all, like you said, geeking out about the same thing. We love trains, we love building them, we love watching them. So yeah, it's excellent.
It's
Uh
amazing when you can start to go places
mhm.
and you start to meet someone and they always have somebody to introduce you to.
Yep.
And before you know it, it's a worldwide network.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely amazing the folks that, and then it also is less than 7 degrees of separation once you start
Mhm.
talking to folks. It's like
Yeah.
that person knows that person. Oh, they knew them. Oh, okay. So but between like I think it's like 3 or 4 degrees by the time it's over. It's a
Right.
very, it's a big community, but it's a very tight knit community as well, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of.
Oh yeah. Yes, it is. So let's move on to, do you currently have a railroad?
I do.
Awesome.
It's in the basement somewhere is kind of the joke that I say.
Okay.
Again, you have the same thing I do. It's a hobby within the hobby. And whether it be a podcast or some folks love to write or do photography, I like to do some prototype photography.
Mhm.
So they do kind of take away from layout time. But I found one of the good things or the good news in the hobby is the railroad will wait for you. And if you do hit those seasons in your life where you have to move away from it or some other things take priority, you can go back to it. And that's what I found. And, through the podcast and through others. And of course, the friends group definitely lead me back there.
Mhm.
Had an amazing moment. We were all together up at the Railroad Hobby Show in West Springfield, Mass.
Mhm.
And two of my friends said to me, next Saturday. I went, what about next Saturday? They said, we're coming over your house and we're going to go find your layout and we're going to, and it's amazing to have friends like that, that'll help you, get back down there, kind of put your hand on you and shove you down the stairs of sorts. But
Right.
yes, I do have a layout. It is a small switching layout, the same one that Mike and I had been working on. And I have, again, it's not my forever layout. And even Mike had said this as we were building this. This doesn't have to be your forever layout. This can be your 5 to 10 year layout.
Mhm.
As the girls are growing, I got to put them through college. I'm sure that weddings will come in at some point and other expenses.
Mhm.
So right now, I've got a 10-foot by 2 foot wide bench that ties over with a way too sharp of a curve, but it makes it over to a 2 foot by 6 foot bench. And I operate it. I call it the P&W and NECR interchange model railroad. Now, I mentioned before I had a love for the New England Central early on, but then I moved to Plainfield, Connecticut. And where my house is situated, I'm right between the Providence and Worcester's Norwich branch
Mhm.
and the Willimantic branch. And their yard is like literally a stone's throw from where my house is. And it was hard not to model the P&W because I saw it
Right.
every day.
Sure.
So I kind of figured out a way to tie them all in and built a small switching layout, which now, once I get it back up and operating again, I was entertaining three guys for 2.5 hours switching cars. And, it doesn't take a ton of railroad to do this. And I'm kind of, as I interview folks and I hear different layouts and, it's really about, just being able to have something I can go down, I can switch it myself, or I can have a couple friends over. I can't have the massive group of people that some others are able to do, but we have a lot of fun and it's helping me hone my skills for the next layout that I may want to build. And, it's always a negotiating process with the wife to try to get enough real estate and, where are things going to go? So I know I have to put an addition on the house before I'm going to be able to get enough real estate to do what I really want to do in my basement.
Mhm.
But this is definitely a holdover. And again, a platform for me to express what I have for artistic ability
Mhm.
and be able to have a railroad of my own.
Sure. It's funny you say that about the negotiating. Yeah, I think my, real estate negotiating took about 3 or 4 months, and once the parameters were set, it was like, "Okay, yes, dear."
Yeah.
So, um, So what scale then? Obviously, you told us what road and all that you model, but what scale do you model in then?
And I'm an HO scale modeler.
Okay.
I did take a little dabble in N scale in my just preteen years. My dad had purchased an N scale layout. I will tell you this. I sometimes think about N scale again, especially the advances. We talked about advances in the hobby,
Mm,
but holy moly, N scale and what they've been able to do in the last 10 or 15 years. N scale is in play as far as I'm
it is.
concerned. The technology has caught up with N scale as things are able to be condensed down to smaller capabilities. I've been able to have the opportunity to operate at the Dean Ferris's Oregon joint line, which was an amazing layout. Unfortunately, it has now been taken down, but I was able to operate there before that, and it ran like a Swiss watch. And I was so worried about switching N scale.
Mm,
I'm going to knock the cars over. And absolutely not. The layout ran so well. Great operating scheme. It's a shame it's gone, but it lives on in memories on YouTube. So if anybody wants to check that out, Dean Ferris's Oregon joint line, great N scale layout. And yeah, so I dabbled with N scale a bit, but I am an HO guy, and um, yeah, and again, it's hard to. One thing is the availability of HO, but N scale's catching up. It's coming.
Oh yeah, yeah, it really is. I think I was when I got back into this, I was looking at between N and HO, and really the determining factor for me were two things. Or basically, well, it's one thing, the size of it, because I like to have, or I should say, at some point, like we stated or I stated earlier about being able to take rail cars down the road and super detail more locomotives. N scale, that's a little more difficult, but also, let's face it, I'm not getting any younger. We're none of us are getting any younger, and I know from when I was in it 15 years ago, my I don't know, steadiness and I definitely my eyesight's not as good.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
for
was
sure. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna stick with the HO. It's a little easier to see. So
I
uh,
did decal a N scale car fairly recently, and as I was doing it, I was like, "Wow, these N scale guys!" I just had such a new appreciation for them. On the box car, there's that decal that goes on the door. It looks like a half circle, and like the bottom half of the circle's filled. I'm not sure what the meaning of it is. I'd love to know what the heck the meaning of that is, but I can tell you that decal was about the size of a fat flea. Right? It was just so small. And I had my head over the magnifying glass. I almost should have put a chin cup on the magnifying glass because I had my face completely buried in it, trying to see everything. It
mm,
was wildly challenging. And I said, wow, the guys I'm thinking of like Dennis Colucci and all these other N scale guys that just do this all the time. I'm like, well, Dennis is younger too. Dennis is in his 20s and he can
right.
see, but me in my mid 40s, yeah, my glasses are on and I'm trying to see all this stuff. And yeah, it's wildly complicated, but good for those guys
Yeah,
that stick with it and are able to continuously do it and do it so well.
right. And I'm really glad to see it's gained popularity because I know when I remember I like you growing up through the years, I dabbled in N scale myself, had several what I would call portable, your typical 2 foot by 4 foot or 3 foot by 4 foot layouts, in N scale, and back then, the availability wasn't at there like it is now, so it's good that there's, it's really advanced for the N scalers, and it really is a good scale, especially for people that, well, Benjamin Zahner,
Mhm.
like him, he lives in an apartment. It's a perfect and what he's doing with his railroad, it's a perfect scale for that because he can get a lot of railroad in a little bit of space and keep his enthusiasm going. And so, yeah, it's great to see that they keep the N scale, they keep advancing N scale stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then do you use or, I guess, prefer DCC or DC for yours?
I'm a DCC guy. I remember learning the first time about DCC. I still use the same NCE power cab that I bought back then. It's had the upgrade to it, had the chip change, but yeah, I used the same power cab I bought in '05 or '04, whenever the heck it was.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm not only a DCC guy, I'm definitely an NCE guy. We have, I think that's, some great advice for anybody that's looking to figure out, like, what system do I use? My answer to that is, well, what do your friends use? And sometimes, you hear that saying, well, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it? But it's really about the support system, because as much as you can find on the internet and as much as you could call a manufacturer and get advice, what better than to be able to ask your buddy, hey, you have this, I have this. What did you experience? And have you experienced this before? And be able to go back and forth and be able to help each other.
Sure.
Plus, if you go to each other's layouts, at least you have the same equipment. Now, if I go over to my friend Mark Herrick's, his is an NCE, so I can bring my Pro Cab over there and operate on his layout, and he can come over and use it on mine. So it's always good to look and see, and not, every system has its advantages and disadvantages, but it's definitely good to be able to have that local support system for it as well.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. You hit the nail on the head with that. Now, me, I'm a Digitrax guy. Uh, I I haven't. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if I've actually had any NCE experience, but years ago, I want to say this would have been back in like 2002, 2003. Uh, a railroad club. Well, it was a model train only shop here in the Quad Cities, but they had a layout in the back, and that was back in the day when wasn't NCE, it was Wangro, if you
Hmm.
remember that. And I I ran those personally at the time. It was one of those things where, yeah, I nothing about the operation of it. I just didn't like how the throttle sat in my hand and the controls,
Sure.
and so I looked into the Digitrax, and I did Digitrax back then, and then coming back into the hobby, I just went with what I knew. Granted, I knew they had advanced and stuff, but the core, it was the same. So yeah,
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's probably some of the best advice, and I give it to people. The same advice when somebody asks me, "Hey, what system should I go with?" Well, why don't you know people? Maybe kind of go with what the general consensus is in your area, because just like you said, you'll have that support if you do run into an issue, or I shouldn't say if, when we all
Yeah,
run into an
when,
issue
yeah,
at some
when
point,
it's all, it's a, yeah, it's electronics. There's eventually something.
Yep.
And it's also amazing. You mentioned a hobby shop, just how influential these hobby shops can be. And certainly 10, 15, 20 years ago were, because that was the central point of knowledge, was to
Yep.
go down to your local hobby shop, and whatever they were pushing is likely what you got. And they had so much influence on model railroaders, and really to this day. And that's also something to consider.
You're
And
right.
I'm a big fan of some of these internet retailers too, and I like instant gratification. I'm one of those folks, but that local brick and mortar hobby shop has a lot of power and a lot of advantage. There is value to that, even if you have to pay a few extra bucks, when there are certain things that are worth getting from your local hobby shop, or getting the input from your local hobby shop and supporting them by buying that product they help you with.
Mhm. And for me even, which we don't really have any model railroad hobby shops in the area anymore. We have a couple hobby shops, but they've all went to like the RC and plastic model building stuff. Um, but even, before they switched over, you could walk into one of them, and as soon as I walked into the train section, it was going back to like what special memories you walked in and brought back special memories, which in turn invigorated. Okay, that was great, and then it really got the gears going for wanting to model, and oh, I've got this project, I want to get that done. So even if you don't go in and buy anything from the hobby shop, you just walk around you'd be surprised at just oh the the energy you can get from walking into one.
I was going to say invigorated senses, right? It,
Yes.
it just touches all your senses, right? And
Yes, it
the
does.
touch, even the smell, even the, yeah, everything about, yeah, being totally immersed within model railroading is something special.
Calling all model railroaders and railroad enthusiasts. The Hawkeye Model Railroad Club and ScaleSigns.com are proud to sponsor the 5th annual Iowa City Train Show on Sunday, October 19th at the Johnson County Fairgrounds in Iowa City, Iowa, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Enjoy 2 buildings packed full of model railroad items in scales HO, NO, and more, along with railroad memorabilia of all shapes and sizes. Admission is just $5 for adults, with kids 12 and under free. Don't forget to also check out the Hawkeye Model Railroad Club's layout progress down at their club building, open to the public for free all day long. Interested in being a vendor or displaying your organization or model railroad layout? Check out our website at www.hawkeyemodelrclub.com/2025 train show. The 5th annual Iowa City Train Show, sponsored by ScaleSigns.com and the Hawkeye Model Railroad Club on Sunday, October 19th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Johnson County Fairgrounds in Iowa City, Iowa. We'll see you at the show.
And scalers, are you ready to add some sleek, powerful diesels to your railroad? Broadway Limited Imports, proud partner of the Model Railroad Talk podcast, has something big coming your way. Introducing the Baldwin RF-16 Shark Nose locomotives, set to arrive in spring 2026. These beauties are packed with incredible features, including road-specific details for ultimate realism, all new tooling for precision accuracy, authentic prototype sounds to bring your railroad to life, multiple lighting functions for added realism, premium caliber paint that makes these models stand out. Don't miss out. Place your order with your favorite dealer by July 10th to guarantee delivery by spring 2026.
Are you tired of seeing the same old clean trains on your layout? Do you want realistic rolling rust buckets or something that looks like it's been around a few years? What about a grimy oil stained locomotive? Alan at Alan's N Scale World is just your guy. He specializes in custom weathering of any scale and has 3 different stages of weathering to choose from. He also hand paints some of the coolest N scale semis and trailers on the market. Get a hold of him today to find out what he can do for your model railroad. You can find him on Facebook at Alan's N Scale World or email him directly at allansnscaleworld@gmail.com. Alan's N Scale World, bringing you scale creations from real life situations.
Right, right. I agree. Um, all right. So I know this is kind of it's kind of a general question, but if you could pinpoint and one thing, what is the best thing for you, anyways? What is the best thing about the hobby?
The
Like, if you
people.
could narrow it down to one thing.
Oh, easy. The people.
Okay.
The people. 100%. It really is. We have such an amazingly connected, giving, and supportive community. There's exceptions to every rule, but I am hard pressed to find the exceptions at times over the rule. It
Mhm.
is really such a community that wants to see others succeed. It's not one layout competing against another. It's not a sport where we have to win or lose. It is just all of us rising together.
Mhm.
And you have so many people that are willing to take their knowledge, all this accumulated knowledge. And when I say accumulated, it's been gifted to them as well. And they're so willing to re-gift it. I think of guys like my good friend Don Iris, amazing modeler, who will maybe, bust your chops a little bit when you ask a question, but ultimately will walk you through and stay on the phone or connect to you via video chat
Mhm.
or and do all these things to make sure that you understand it and that you're moving forward in the hobby. And he's just a microcosm of the people. You think of the folks that write articles for magazines, and there's not big money in that. There's not big money in writing a book. It's about them wanting to share their wealth of knowledge with everybody else in the hobby. And that is just, it's so amazing to be so giving. Go to an RPM, go to a train show, go up and ask people questions, and they'll talk your ear off.
Oh,
It's amazing. And so that answer is very, very easy for me. That is so simple. It really is. It is the people in this hobby that make it so special.
sure, sure. And I guess mine would be, it's basically the same thing, just worded differently. Community.
Yeah.
The community is yeah, first and foremost. All right, so let's move on to something that this may be a little bit tougher of a question unless just recently something happened. But what is something you recently learned in the hobby?
Oh boy. You seemingly learn. My big kick right now stems from operating on the aforementioned Don Iris's layout in Sebastian, Florida.
Okay.
I went down there. This was a fun trip. I flew out of Connecticut on a Wednesday morning. I landed there in Florida, Central Florida, Space Coast kind of area.
Mhm.
Well, Orlando to drive to Space Coast. Was there about midday on Wednesday. Went to lunch, came back, got Don's speed matching 101 class, and then operated on his layout. Then left there, went over to John Farrington's at 10 o'clock at night. Got to see John Farrington's Somerset and Raritan Railroad. Didn't get to operate it because it was late. Drove back to the hotel, got to bed about 1:30, up at 4:30 to get back on a plane to fly home. So it was like
Oh,
a
wow.
less than 24-hour train, model railroad operating / site, whatever, to hang out with Don, hang out with John, to operate his layout. Well, anyway, while I was down there on this marathon trip,
Mhm.
I got to operate Don's PR3 job, and it ran so well. And I never touched the locomotives once, never had to re-rail a car. Well, maybe I knocked it off. But anyway, it was nothing of Don's doing. It was 100% just a great operating scheme, plus just technically sound.
Mhm.
So I started asking Don some questions. I was like, how'd you make it so good? And I've taken those notes and I've now started to apply it. More drops, uh, tighter joints, filing joints, making sure they're smooth. Uh, like I said, in turnouts, inner rail, outer rail, all have drops. If I power a locomotive through a turnout that's backwards, I would rather that than to sit there and watch a locomotive stall on a turnout. And I have keep alives in all of my locomotives,
Mhm.
but even then, that time where it hits the frog or hits the rail and stalls, I don't trust rail joiners and I don't trust points to carry power anymore. I make sure everything's powered because that's what Don did. And seeing the results of that meticulous slow down and do it right will provide what was an awesome operating opportunity and experience. So yeah, that's what I've learned is mainly slow down, do your track work right, do these little things, maintain your locomotives right, clean the wheels, make sure that everything is set up to go for an operating scheme. Take the time, and your session's going to go hopefully as well as Don's, which was absolutely amazing.
Sure. And that's something actually great advice. I know that's when I was building this one. Um, there was always part of me like, okay, I wanna start building scenery. I want to do this, but I also knew in the back of my head, I'm not laying down any scenery. I'm not doing anything. Okay, yeah, I might put in a hill here or something, but I'm not throwing scenery on it or nothing until my track work I know is done and I've ran every switch how many times and make sure and I still have stuff that I'm going back fine tuning. So that's some great advice. I don't think I've ever even really said that before to anybody, but yeah, it's you said it perfectly. Take your time. For me anyways with the track. And once you get the track work done, okay, yeah, if you want to hurry through scenery and stuff like that, but let's face it, scenery doesn't run the trains. It's the track.
I'll agree and then I'll slightly disagree, because what you want to do is never hurry.
No.
That model railroading is not about the destination. It's the journey. It's kind of like we joke about, a layout is never finished. The time that it's finished is when the Sawzall and dumpster comes. 99.9% is all you'll ever be able to achieve, because I guarantee you there's always going to be something you're going to want to add. You're going to want to add a super detail. You're going to want to add a figure. You're going to want to add another car. Or you're going to want to make a slight bit of change. It's always under construction, but always remember, it's about being able to do these things. And what's harder for me, like one of the things I enjoy the most about the hobby is bench work.
Oh,
bench
really?
work is done so early on that how do you continue to be able to do that thing you love? I guess I got to keep adding on. So I've got more negotiating to do with the wife, right? To get more space to start doing all this. But yeah, it really is, to me, it's about it's about the journey, not the destination. The destination is the end of it. We're always going to be continuing. So take your time, enjoy it, have fun with it.
Well, and even, one more thing to add to that, and make sure you learn from it, whether it's from mistakes or from other people. So, and that's it.
And you can learn so much. You talk about the community. I tell folks, if you're just starting out, go see layouts, go visit. And that's part about sticking your head out there and asking, because people love to show off their layouts. And don't worry about going to see all completed layouts. A layout that's half complete or less is like an autopsy. You get to see it. This is the nuts and bolts. Yeah, what you have behind you is a great way to learn. Go see something that's not complete, because you can see it. Because when you see a completed layout, I think at times it can like blow your mind. And then maybe it sometimes go, oh, I don't think I could ever get to this. But then when you see the cutaway and you go, oh, it's just plaster sheets, and it's not like there's actual dirt and mountains underneath it. It's plaster sheet, or it's foam, or it's just, when you can see the autopsy, then you can start to get the idea. I could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely. So, I guess this may be, this question you may have already stated. What advice would you give someone looking at getting into the hobby or new to the hobby?
Yeah, again, learn as much as you can. Become a student of the hobby. Listen. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak, and listen to folks that are willing to teach, that are willing to take under the wing. Go see as many layouts as you can and be open to new ideas, because you may find, although somebody may not be modeling the railroad that you want to, you're going to pick up great ideas, and maybe even bad ideas. You may go to somebody's layout and say, that's not for me. And then and that's not wrong, because it's great for them, but not great for you. But take a lot of takeaways from layout visits. Go see as many as possible, meet as many people as possible, have those conversations, become a good student, and you're going to find you're going to have a lot more enjoyment in that knowledge of knowing this is the way. And remember, I joke about Sammy Hagar says there's only one way to rock, but there's a million ways to model railroad.
Yep.
And remember that there's not just one right answer. There's multiple right answers. Find the answer that's right for you.
And not only just in the building, but if there's an issue, if you come across the issue with yours, you might have 2 people telling you the same thing. Well, you have to do it, change it this way. Step outside the box. Reach out to maybe somebody you wouldn't normally ask, and they might come up with a different solution as well. So you're absolutely right. There's this hobby. It's not just one way. It's
1,000 doors into the hobby. And even if you don't want to build a layout, that's okay too. There's guys that collect. There's guys that just go and operate other people's layouts, and that's their part in the hobby. It doesn't always have to be about layout building. It doesn't always have to be about super detailing. It doesn't have to be about one particular scale. It doesn't have to be about it. There's 1,000 doors of entry into our hobby all lead to that same community, and you are a part of it. You are a model railroader.
And the question is, which door do you choose?
Exactly. And maybe you go through one and go back out and go through another one, right? There's you can change your path at any time. There's no hard and fast rules here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All great advice. So we're going to change the scene here a little bit. So Ray, you host and produce the Around the Layout podcast. We're going to touch on this a little bit. When did that start?
Started in 2022.
Okay. What were some of the driving factors for you to start the podcast?
It's kind of funny. We talk about the pandemic, and of course it's hard to say the good things that came out of the pandemic without acknowledging the bad things about the pandemic, the separation of us folks, along with those that suffered, those who got sick, those that are no longer with us. So but through the pandemic came a lot of this technology like we're using today. There was a flood of it, and it started to force us through regulation and the sort to connect in different ways. For our operating group that operates out of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, and we'll even include Florida in that for Don, who's relocated, we were unable to connect. We were unable to hold these operating sessions. So we went to Zoom, and we started having these Zoom meetings on Thursday nights instead of operating. And what was amazing was the conversations that would come out of these Zoom meetings were completely different than what we would have at an operating session. Because you would show up at an operating session, you would get your assignment. You may say, "Hey, how are you? How's the family?" There may be one or two anecdotal things to say to each other. But then it was off to your train and getting totally immersed in your operating job and whatever else was going on. And then maybe a few nice words, and then you left.
Right.
But now we don't have the trains to get in the way. Not a nice way to say it. We'd love the trains in the way, but
right.
Now it's just us having conversations. Mm-hmm. So we started asking questions, and we're finding out about things about each other that we had no idea. Why did you model the BNSF Montana division? Oh, I didn't know when you were young, Mark, you went out and camped in Montana and fell in love with the BN and the BNSF. Or Don, I didn't know about this about you or all the other people in the group. And as these conversations are going along, I went, wow, this sounds like a podcast. And there were other podcasts out there about model railroading, and they have their own niche in the podcast realm. What I wanted to do, and I go back when I was 18, I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I thought I wanted to be a radio guy. Mm-hmm. And then I found out radio guys don't make much money and started chasing money and went a different direction. Girls got in the way too. I went back to it and I said, wow, I'd really love to be able to do this. My buddy Dave Gardner had a podcast that wasn't model railroading, but I saw how much fun he was having with it and how many people he was meeting. And I want to meet new people and really get to the why. And that's kind of what drove Around the Layout podcast in the beginning. And of course, when you start a podcast, what's easy? You bring on your friends and start talking to them because they're easy to ask and they're more agreeable.
Yep.
So I started bringing them on, and I just started trying to get to the why of model railroading. What's your passion? What drives you in the hobby? What influences you in the hobby? So that's what's really the start of Around the Layout podcast came from was that. And then it just kind of took off from there. And it's amazing because of that community. Then you just start meeting new people and then driving towards their why. And you find we have some similar whys, and then there's some really unique whys, the stories that folks have and are able to tell. And again, going back to it, we're all compelled by stories, and it's always fun to be able to share folks and let them share their story with the community.
Sure. I completely agree with that, and that's awesome. I think most of us in the Model Railroad podcast world we have the same end goal, but yeah, I think, that's awesome. What, has having the podcast taught you?
I continue to learn every time I do a podcast.
Sure.
Every time you do a podcast, you learn something different, or you find a different way to phrase a question, or you learn something technically, or you try something different and you learn that that's not the way to do it. That may happen more often than not at times, but
Right.
yeah, I'm learning every time, and what it is. It's about, again, the community, and just you find out, you say it's tight knit, and then you find out how real tight knit it is as you start to have these conversations.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the stuff I've learned from doing this podcast, mine, and, of course, I listen to other podcasts as well, just we're like a community, I guess, the way I look at it, and, yeah, I can listen to something, and I always try to find something that I didn't know. I always try to learn something I didn't know from not only guests on my show, but, from listening to other podcasts, and, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing in this hobby is the strive to want to learn how to do something that we don't know how to do. And you almost have
Absolutely.
to have that urge to be a model railroader to some degree,
Yeah, I think, the drive, right? You got to have a drive towards the things that you love and things that bring you back to it, whether it be back to the layout or back to a hobby shop or back to the microphone in front of the screen and
Yep.
talking to different people, or all the things that go on behind the scenes within these hobbies and within a hobby.
Mhm.
Podcasting being one of them. Podcasting is its own hobby that we've been able to incorporate model railroading into.
Mhm.
But yeah, you got to be able to be driven, and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of just like model railroading. It's all one and the same when it comes to the prep and the work that goes into it. And when I say work, it's really pleasure, but it's a labor, and a labor of love.
It really is, because I know, the episode after this is actually, this or Model Railroad Talks, what I call 2-year mark. It's 104th,
And
and
congratulations. It's so hard. I don't want to interrupt you there, but
oh, you're
I
fine.
want to I want to make sure celebrate that, because it is so hard to not do what they call pod fade.
Right.
There's so many folks that have gotten into it. They do a dozen or so episodes, and then they find out how much work it is, and then it fades out. And I think, a little bit of longevity also goes to doing a good justice to the hobby. We have a responsibility as podcasters to the hobby. We become a voice in the hobby. We become promoters of the hobby. And you want to always make sure you do a great job. You always want to make sure that what you're putting out there is in a positive light and is bringing people towards the hobby and
Mhm.
keeping them enthused about it. And we also owe it to the podcasting hobby. So we got two real responsibilities:
Right.
to put out quality, entertaining products.
Mhm.
And I'm always thinking about that. And I know you are as well. What is my audience going to get out of this podcast? Hopefully, what they're getting out of it, they're either going to laugh, they're going to cry, maybe they'll cry today, or they'll be entertained in some form, or they're going to learn something. And hopefully, combinations of all of that are going to be the end result. And that's the responsibility that we have as podcasters.
Mhm. Oh, I agree. Yeah, it's I know going back a little bit here, I know that there were several times that after I got so far is like, the work it goes into this, and I'm not trying to when I say this, I'm not trying if there's somebody listening to this right now or maybe listens to your podcast, I'm not trying to say don't get into podcasting. But you the if you are doing a podcast, and I'm just gonna say this generally, that has to do with, say, your hobby, realize that, A, it's gonna take away from that hobby, the physical work of that hobby, but also it is a lot of, there is a lot of work to it, and not just the recording like you and I are doing now, but as you well know, you know better than I do because you've been at it longer. The behind the scenes, getting things, the episodes ready, and then getting guests lined up. Or okay, well, this next episode, there's no guest. I coming up with material, and I going back on it. There were times that I'm just like, I don't know how much longer I can go at this, but a good friend of mine that actually we became the best of friends because of my podcast. Um, he's like, well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but he said, I can tell you that I would hate for you to stop doing it. And his kind, encouraging words are what actually, I guess, kept that little fire going enough. And now and this was, actually not probably 6, 7 months ago. And he's like, you're just so close to hitting that 2 year mark. He goes, hang out to the 2 year mark, see what happens. And I'm glad I did, because the way it's working out, and I have, great guests like you on, and just had guys from Spring Creek Model Trains on, and so on and so forth. It's one of those things that it's just like the hobby or of model railroading. You have to put in the work, go through the hard times to get to the good times. And but yeah, in the end though, us as podcasters in the model railroading hobby, I think that's the biggest thing, is keeping the vibe in a positive manner, trying to teach. Well, like I always say, for Model Railroad Talk, teach, inform, and promote.
They have that saying that goes, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, okay. But there's work to it.
Right.
And it goes back even to model railroading. There are things that you're not going to enjoy about model railroading that are necessary. I know some guys that don't like bench work. I love bench work, but they don't. They don't like doing it. They don't want to do it. It's like the painful part. But think of it as the flywheel, and you need to keep that flywheel turning and thinking about the positive results that will happen through the process that you need to go through.
Mm-hmm.
If locomotive maintenance or speed matching or installing decoders is not your thing, you have options. You can farm that stuff out, or you can learn it and do it and know that it's just a season in your model railroading journey.
Mm-hmm.
That's keeping that flywheel turning. And what also keeps that flywheel turning is knowing what the end result is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm doing a podcast, I love this part, recording, talking to folks. It's the stuff after, the editing, the posting social media, the thumbnails. That's a little bit more challenging and a little bit more time consuming, but that's the thoughts of what the end result is going to be when this is all put together and I get this episode put out and it gets into the model railroading community and hopefully inspire somebody to get out of their chair or drive from wherever they are to their hobby shop to get started.
Mm-hmm.
Is all those positive thoughts that keep that flywheel turning.
Yep.
The community itself, meeting new people, great opportunities that come from doing this podcast, from doing this type of work, are all the things that keep it going. Just like, again, your model railroad, laying track may not be your thing, but you got to have it, because if you love ops, guess what you need? You got to have that track laid. You got to be able to, you got to have industries, you got to have buildings, and maybe scratch buildings not your thing, or even just building buildings in general. But you're going to need, and just learn it, enjoy it, have as much fun as possible. Don't look at it as a chore. Look at it as an opportunity that you get to do it, and feel blessed that you have that opportunity to express your artistic abilities and be able to have a layout, because there's some folks that just can't get to that point or be able to do it or pull the trigger.
Right. Right. And that is some great advice. Well, Ray, any final words you'd like to throw out there?
No, I'm really glad to be a part of this. This is It's always fun to be a part of a podcast that I don't have to edit after I've done it. So that's
Right.
definitely a positive. And it's great to connect with other podcasters. We talked about community of model railroading, and then within the hobby, a community of podcasters. And we have a really great community of podcasters. I could start naming names of the Mike, Mike Ostertag and Andy Dorsch of Second Section, and Tom Gaisher of Crossing Gate, and Nick Orzak at the Roundhouse, and John Abatacola, TSG Multimedia. We've all, in some way or shape or form, and if I'm forgetting somebody, please forgive me. Model train people, and the folks Dennis and that group that is doing model train people, all have a different niche. And it's, again, just like model railroading, there's no competition.
No.
Because what I hope is that my listeners will listen and say, wow, this is cool. What else is out there? And then they find Model Railroad Talk, or vice versa, or find yet another podcast. We all rise together. And this is not like the late night wars where we're all on at 11:35 Monday through Friday, and we're all fighting for audience.
Right.
We're not. Your audience is my audience is your audience, it's everybody's audience. And more important is to bring the 350,000 plus model railroaders that are in the United States, and then the countless ones globally, into the world of model railroad podcasting in one way, shape, or form.
Yep.
Whether it be your podcast or mine or any others, they will eventually find the rest. And they may listen to my show and go, well, this one isn't for me, but Model Railroad Talk's my thing. And I love listening to Gary and the things that he's doing over there. Or it's Mike and Andy, or it's John, or it's Tom, or it's Nick, or it's Dennis and his crew, or whoever else is out there. That's what's important about our hobby, and our hobby within a hobby, all rising together, bringing people together, and supporting that community and that concept.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that any better. And that's, I wholeheartedly agree. Just like model railroading, there's different parts that, like you just stated, that some people like to do, some people don't like to do. They prefer others. It's the same with the podcast. They're all different niches. We all kind of go for different angles. But in the end, anybody listening to this, I know, well, at least from my side, and this is like more or less me to you, Ray, I am all on board with what you're doing. And I support you and many, like I do many other podcasts, because in the end, I feel a majority of us podcasters in the model railroad world, we are, our end goal is the same, and that's to help those wanting to come into the hobby and to promote the hobby.
Yeah, rise it up, rise together. Absolutely.
All right, Ray. Well, I really appreciate you coming on to the show. It's awesome to have you on here, and actually awesome to actually talk to you for the first time. I know we've messaged several times off and on here, and it's been a pleasure having you on here, Ray.
Yeah, it's been an absolute blast. Glad to be on Model Railroad Talk, and congratulations on 2 years.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, there you have it, folks. Ray Arnott from Around the Layout podcast. It was great to have him on, and I think it shows that not only in the model railroading community, but in other forms as well, that we can all get along. Just because he has a podcast on model railroading and I do, and these other ones, it doesn't mean that we have to be at each other's throats or anything like that. We all talk about different things on our podcast, and you know what? I support Ray, and hopefully he supports me. It sounds like he does, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. But so yeah, I obviously another great guest that I would have on again. So before we get out of here, I know the last couple episodes I have forgot to do our reading from 400 plus thrilling and unbelievable train facts for enthusiasts. So this one isn't, we're not going to let this one slip by either. This one's out of iconic train models and locomotives. The Flying Scotsman, a legendary steam locomotive, gained fame for its record-breaking speed and luxurious passenger service between London and Edinburgh, capturing the hearts of railway enthusiasts worldwide. So that is from 400 plus thrilling and unbelievable train facts for enthusiasts, written by Nathan Ward. Book was purchased by the girlfriend's daughter and given to me for Christmas. So I thank her daughter for that. Reminder, you have until next week, next Saturday, April 26th, to get your entries in for the Broadway Limited gift certificate giveaway. 1 entry per person. You just our form below, or you can go to our website and submit your entry. If you want a second entry, you have to be a Patreon out of the free we call it the free trial period before April 26th. So jump over there and get on the bandwagon and support this podcast and be a premium supporter. Or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/ModelRailTalk. Show us some support that way. Or if you prefer to do just a one-time support, like our good friend Steve L., we do have a PayPal account for this podcast, and it's at Model Railroad Talk. So by doing that, gains you a second entry automatically. So, but it's 1 entry per person. You can go to our website, www.modelrailroadtalk.com. And at the top, we have giveaway. You click on that, and it'll take you right to the form, or the page will take you to the form, something like that. And submit it in, and we will get you entered in. Trying to think. There's a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Oh, yeah. Don't forget Hawkeye Model Railroad Club Train Show, October 19th. The train show is basically from, I want to say it's like 9 to 5 p.m. or 9 to 4 p.m., Iowa City, Iowa. You can go to Hawkeye Model RR Club.com to find out more about that. We actually on our Facebook page shared the event on our Facebook page, so you can go over there as well. We are going to be adding that to our website, and we're going to get that put up there. We're going to put a page up for events, because I'm looking at trying to get on a few more. So once I get that set up, check that out. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, Model Railroad Talk. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, any concerns, any ideas, whatever, you can always reach out to us, modelrailroadtalk@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's all the housekeeping for this episode. I'm just, I'm kind of a little scatterbrained from actually having the last couple, having so many guests, I should say, coming on to the podcast lately, that my normal stuff, I'm kind of out of whack with my normal stuff. So, but that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It gives you guys something else to listen to other than me sometimes. So, so without further ado, as we always like to do, reach out to us. Like I said, website, modelrailroadtalk.com, or you can email us, modelrailroadtalk@gmail.com. Also, if you're interested, check out Around the Layout podcast with Ray over there, and another great podcast. So, in the meantime, one last thing. Don't forget Broadway Limited. Check out our supporter, Broadway Limited, www.broadway-limited.com. They support this podcast, and they're the ones that give us the gift certificate to give away. So thankful to them for that. So without further ado, as we always say, until the next episode, keep your train on the tracks.